Hi everyone, welcome to part 16 of the Frogger mini-series, and in this video we're going to work on the win condition for this prototype. We'll continue our work in the game manager to accomplish this goal. Let's not waste any time and just jump back into it. Alright, so last we left over we created a game over state where we set up game manager and lives so our player can get hit by the car multiple times and eventually trigger that game over state, which is just a print string for now, but we'll expand on that and we're going to try to create basically like a win condition. So let's go to our blueprints folder. We're going to right click, create a new blueprint class. We'll choose a type actor and we'll call it BP underscore maybe destination. We'll double click to open that up. And we just need to add a few components in here. The first component will be a box collision. Our box collision is going to be 300 by 300 by 300, so 300 cubed. And then we're going to add another component. Just make sure you choose the root component, then hit add first. Actually, another way we can do it is let's open our content drawer, go to our art folder, select the Frogger, and we're actually going to select the skeletal mesh, which in this case look like it's named Frog 1. We'll hit add and make a reference to that skeletal mesh Frog 1. And it just kind of adds it in here like so. Now this looks good right now. What we'll want to do is we can hold our box collision, maybe go to right view or maybe front view. There we go. And we're going to just drag it up like so. And I think that'll be just fine. Now another thing we'll probably want to do is actually, we might as well rotate our frog by 90 degrees. I lied, 270 degrees. That way it's facing the forward axis with everything else. All right, so that looks good so far. Now we can come into our main level here. And what we'll do is we'll go to our blueprints folder and let's drag out our BP destination. I knew I was going to rotate that the wrong way. Let's just go back here. And I was right the first time. So instead of 270, let's go back to 90. There we go. All right, so in the original Frogger arcade game, the player has to cross the road, then cross the river, and then he makes it to these predefined destinations, hence the BP destination. So we'll create, I think, 5 of them. And then we're going to drag this up here. And I think we have a little bit of an issue because the terrain is kind of slanted. So we will rotate. Maybe we just want to rotate in 5-degree increments. So we'll switch this from 10 to 5. We'll try that rotation again. And then if we want to move in the local axis, we can click this little planet. That'll choose the local axis. And then we can just move the Frogger down just a little bit. And I think that works a little bit better. We'll go back to global here. All right, so we now have our first destination. I think in the original one had 4 or 5, so we'll just duplicate a few out. What we can do is I'm going to set the Z height to just be 30. That way it's just an easy number. And this one, that's 11,310, so we'll just do 11,310. I think that looks fine. Okay, so what we'll do is just hold the Alt key, drag up, so we duplicate. We'll set this back on the Z height of 30, so it's the exact same height as the other frog. So now it's overlapping. And then what we can do is we can come into our Y direction, and then we can add or subtract. Let's try 1,300. 1,300 units seems about right. So we'll just set up a few of these across the riverbank that the player will have to get to. So same thing here. We'll drag this up, set this back to 30 to reset it. And then this time we will hit the minus sign and subtract 1,300 units. So there's 3. And then we'll do it again. Alt, set this back to 30. And then come to the end, we'll just minus 1,300. Just let it do the math to carry it over. I guess we'll do one more. Alt, which will duplicate. Back to 30 on the height. And this time we're going to add 1300. All right, I think that looks pretty okay. Let's add a little variance to it. So we'll go back into our destination blueprint and let's go into the construction script. And what we can do is we can take our little frog and we can do a set material. And if we click on the frog in the details panel, we see there's multiple elements. Looks like we're going to want to change element 0 and element 2. The material that we're going to select, we don't really know. So what we can do is just right click and promote it to a variable that we can simply call color. And then we'll compile that. And then we're actually going to set the color to be public instance editable. So we can basically set it in scene and change it on the fly. And that'll just be a little bit easier. And then we will of course duplicate this. And we're targeting the element 0, and then this one will be targeting element 2. That way we get like a full frog color. Because this frog has a top color and bottom color. But alright, so let's go ahead and set up the colors real quick. So we have a textures and materials folder. We can right click and select a new material. We'll just call this frog, or maybe do a color name like blue. We might actually do a, we could do material instance maybe. Would probably be better. So let's do frog color. We'll do m_frog. Yeah, let's do that. And then we'll double click, open that up. And then we can hold 3, click on the graph, right click, promote or convert to a parameter that we'll call color. Pass it in here, save. And then I believe we can just right click on that material and create a material instance. We'll call mi_blue. And then we'll right click, create material instance, mi_red. And then we'll just basically repeat that till we have 5 colors. So maybe we'll do orange. Let's see, what else could we do? We could do green. And I don't know, purple. So material instance, mi_purple. So we can just double click each of these and then check the box for color. This one I think we set as blue. So we'll save that. And we don't need that one anymore. And then green, we'll check the box, give some shade of green. Save that. Orange, check a box and pick a shade of orange. Purple and red. They're pretty close. All right, and last but not least, we'll do red. All right, so then we can close out all of these. I think for our default color, maybe we'll do mi_green for the default. Compile and save that. So now our frogs are green, but when we set them up in the level, come over here and change them mi_blue. Maybe we'll leave that one green and we'll do mi_red. And then mi_purple. And what was the last one? Orange. So there you go. So there's your frogs starting off. Now when we play the game, we don't want to see them. So the viewport will select the frog and search for rendering. And we'll make it hidden in game. But the box item, I'm going to unhide that just for debugging. That way we can still kind of see it. Just to make it a little bit easier, I guess. And then what we're gonna do is we'll do an overlap event. So we can go to our event graph. We're just gonna make sure we highlight the box collider. And then we can right click, add an event for the box, choose collision, and then add on component begin overlap. And we'll want to come into a branch check. And the thing we want to check is a Boolean value because we don't want to be able to hit the same trigger that's already been activated multiple times, because eventually we're going to use this to add the player's score, and once they get the 5 destinations or however many destinations are going to be in the map, that'll trigger their win state. So like the you win screen, and you do like the high score or whatever. So we come to our variables. Let's add a maybe we'll call it is active Boolean check. And then we'll just say get is active and do the reverse. So do a not Boolean. So is active is not true. And if it's not true, we'll want to hold Alt, drag this in, and set is active to true. And then after we do that, we'll want to cast to BP player. And we're going to want to check if the other actor is the player actor. I should probably do that after this, actually. So let's reverse that and do this here. That makes more sense. Okay, and then we're going to want to update the score, which we don't have a way to do. And then we're also going to want to take the frog and set hidden in game. We're going to set to false, so it's visible. And then we'll want to maybe do some camera work where we flip the camera, and then we'll want to teleport the player away, and then or maybe respawn the player and destroy this actor, however we want to do that, and then move the player back to the beginning so they can basically kind of do the level again but get one of the other frogs. So if we compile and save this, let's go ahead and play the scene. Let's see if I can make it across here. Now we haven't set up the death event in the river yet, and that was intentional because I don't want to deal with, although I could just move the player start over. I guess that would have been easier as well. Yeah, that probably would have been easier. All right, so move towards the end. So now if we overlap here, we get the little frogs to show up. And then basically once we overlap all of them, it'll be our you win condition basically. Or at least that's the idea anyways. So for now, we'll just do a simple print string that says, you win. And that'll be good for now. But I think it might be fun if the frog is a little more lively, so we can create like an animation for the frog. So we'll do that much the same way we did before. We'll come to our animation folder, right click, create a new animation blueprint. We'll choose our frog skeleton because we're reusing it. We'll just call this ABP underscore, I guess, destination frog. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. Double click that, and we're going to add a state machine. And then we can just call this dance. And then we'll create a singular state called dancing. And then inside that, we can add in one of these idle animations. It looks like the frog is dancing. And then we'll just set it to loop the animation, so it plays indefinitely. And then when we come back to our blueprint, we can select our skeletal mesh. And then there's a animation class. We can choose that destination frog. And now the frog is dancing, which is great. Now in the event graph, after we set the value hidden in game, we actually don't want to do the you win from here. Thinking about it, we should actually do it from our game manager. So we'll compile and save this. And we can't really do anything else here yet. So let's go ahead and go to our blueprints. We'll open up our game manager. And we created a custom event for, you know, when the player loses a life, so we can do kind of much the same. So we'll do custom event for when the player scores. And we just put score, you know, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. And then we're going to be doing the score factor. We'll basically be using, because we're going to be implementing a time or a game timer that is continually counting down. And then once it reaches a certain level, it'll kill the player because they ran out of time or whatever. And then it'll like respawn and reset the timer. Based on how much time is left, we'll use that to give them some score. Like we'll multiply that by 100 or something. So for now, we don't have that set up. We'll just do a simple print string, and maybe we'll just put 100 points or something. And then what we can do is we're going to create a couple of variables. One is going to be the frogs. We can make that an integer. And then what we can do is we can hold control, drag that out to do a getter, pull off and do ++ or increment. So the frogs, when it's initialized, will be equal to 0. If the player scores, we're going to increase that to 1. And then we'll pull off this and say, get all actors of class. And we can do our VP destination. And then we can pull off the out actors and get the length of the array. So basically how many items are in this. In this particular level, there's only 5, but if we do it this way, it'll be dynamic. So if you build some levels that have 10 or some levels that have 2, you know, you won't have to change the code or manually code it. It'll just do it automatically. So then we can basically say if the frogs are greater than or equal to the number of destination points, then we can come into a branch check and then say you won the game, or you won something. We'll do that in a title card in a later video, but this is the gist of it basically. So we can compile and save that. One other thing we can probably do now is we'll just create another variable here called the player score, and we'll set that to be a float value. We'll just do that right now. We don't have to worry about it, but when we get the widget set up for the timer, we'll be able to say whatever, you know, if the player is able to get there to the end a lot faster, they'll get a higher score, and then we'll basically use a game timer to basically kind of calculate that out. But now that we have the game manager set up, we can go back to the destination and we can modify this code just a bit. So after or before the set hidden in game, we can basically call that game manager reference to score. So the way we can do that is on the begin play, we can do a cast to the game manager, and we say get game mode. And then once we have that game mode, we can right click and promote it to a stored variable called our game manager reference. Now that we have a reference to the game manager at the beginning of when this is instantiated, we can pull that into the scene and get a reference to it, and then simply pull off and call any custom event on there, which we have one called score. And then after we score, we can then set the frog to visible. Then we can maybe come into a delay. We'll wait maybe 1 second. And then what we can do is we are already casting to the player. And if I remember right, in the last video, we created some custom events on the player. The player, we had 3. We had the death event, which we're not going to call because the player didn't die. But we separated out camera work and spawn and swap. We can reuse those for this as well, which is kind of nice. So we can come back to the game manager, or I'm sorry, the destination blueprint, and since we're already doing a cast on the player, we can pull off and target camera work. And then we can also pull off and target spawn and swap. This will basically kind of reset the player and make things a little bit easier. Let's not do that right now. So we'll leave these disconnected for now. And let's actually bring these down, maybe right here. And we'll add one down here as well. Just because I don't feel like moving everything around quite yet. So this won't spawn the player. Let's at least see if the logic works. And if you're asking if I perfectly set this up to where I can always start the map going forward, no, that was just kind of lucky, but I'll take it. And then for the player, we can actually set a random start timer to let the things kind of spawn in. Whoops. And get like a range. Okay, so we'll come through and we'll trigger all these. So we got 100 points. That goes away in the top left corner, and I can't re-trigger that. So we're not getting extra points. There's 2. Here's 3. Here's 4. And the 5th one should say a you win. Or you won, which it does. So that's working. Now in the BP destination, let's hook up these 2 things real quick. And this should basically, every time the player scores, it should reset the player back to World Origin. Well, I guess not World Origin, but our player start. So they can basically traverse across again, which is reminiscent of the original game. Like I think when you get to one of the endpoints, it would flip you back, and then you'd basically, I think it was, so you're guiding a series of frogs across the lake. Now that I do that, it flips me over to the camera, pulls me over here, and then I basically rinse and repeat. So now we have a game over state where the frog, you know, can be hit by a car and die multiple times. I should not have jumped there. Oh, that's one thing I forgot. So we forgot to make a change here. Yeah, okay, so let's make sure we do that real quick. Let's go into, I think that was in the player. And the last one, under camera work, the new hidden. We want that to be true. Let's make sure I think we unset that to show something in the previous one. There we go, so now it's disappearing. Perfect. So now we have a game over state where if we die 3 times, see if I can hit this car, made it. So it says game over in the top left corner and it won't respawn me. And we also have a win condition where if we get across the map and we trigger those 5 zones, that'll be basically, you know, you won screen. And then we still have to do some work with the scoring, of course. But all right, people, we'll cut it here because this is already getting kind of long. But in the next one, we will flesh out the win-loss conditions by adding a game timer and having the river cause a death state for the player. But as always, thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and we'll see you on the next one.